I never thought I would be that guy. The one telling a story about how his wife cheated on him. I was a project manager at a successful construction company in Atlanta. Jennifer and I had been married for 7 years, living in our suburban dream home with plans to start a family. I worked hard, loved her completely, and thought we were happy. Then I started noticing the signs: late-night texts, new clothes, suddenly hitting the gym 5 times a week. When I found those explicit messages on her tablet, my entire world crumbled. Before I tell you how I confronted her and what happened when her affair partner showed up at my door, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories. I met Jennifer at a backyard barbecue hosted by our mutual friend Ryan. She caught my eye immediately with her vibrant laugh and infectious energy. I was drawn to her confidence and the way she engaged with everyone around her. When Ryan introduced us, there was an immediate connection. We talked for hours that evening, long after other guests had left. By the end of the night, I had her number and a promise for dinner later that week. Our relationship moved quickly. After just 3 months of dating, we were practically living together. By 6 months, we were discussing marriage. Some of my friends thought we were rushing things, but when you know, you know. I proposed on our 1-year anniversary during a weekend trip to Savannah, and we were married 3 months later in a beautiful ceremony with 150 of our closest friends and family. The first years of our marriage were everything I had hoped for. We bought our dream home in a nice Atlanta suburb, complete with a spacious backyard and enough bedrooms for the children we planned to have. I worked my way up to project manager at my construction company, while Jennifer thrived as a marketing specialist at a local firm. We traveled, entertained friends, and built what I thought was an unshakable foundation for our future. Just last year, we had started seriously discussing having a baby. Jennifer seemed excited about starting a family, and we even converted one of the spare bedrooms into what would eventually become a nursery. We were financially stable, our careers were established, and the timing felt right. I remember thinking how blessed I was to have such a perfect life with the woman I loved. The first signs of trouble started about 6 months ago, though at the time I did not recognize them for what they were. Jennifer began talking about a new coworker named Jessica, who had recently transferred from their Chicago office. Suddenly, they were having girls' nights out 2 or 3 times a week. I was happy Jennifer had made a new friend, but the frequency seemed unusual. I started noticing small changes in her behavior. She became protective of her phone, taking it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. If I entered a room while she was texting, she would quickly put the phone down or switch to a different app. When I asked who she was messaging, her answers were vague: just Jessica or just work stuff. Our intimacy began to wane. She was often too tired or had a headache. Our conversations became superficial, lacking the depth and connection we once shared. I initially attributed these changes to stress at work. Jennifer had mentioned her company was going through some restructuring, and I thought she might be worried about her position. As the weeks passed, my concerns grew. I found receipts from restaurants across town on days when Jennifer said she was working late. There was a new expensive perfume on her vanity that she claimed was a gift from her sister, but her birthday was months away. The inconsistencies piled up, but I kept making excuses, not wanting to believe what was becoming increasingly obvious. The turning point came when my friend Dave called me one evening. He had seen Jennifer at a restaurant in Buckhead with a man he did not recognize. They were sitting close, holding hands across the table, looking very much like a couple. When Dave described the man, tall, athletic build, well-dressed, I did not know who he was, but I knew he was not just a coworker or friend. I was torn between confronting Jennifer immediately and gathering more information. The thought of accusing her without concrete evidence made me hesitate. What if there was an innocent explanation? What if Dave was mistaken? I did not want to damage our trust over a misunderstanding. But the knot in my stomach told me something was very wrong. For a week, I observed Jennifer more carefully. She was coming home later from work, often smelling of alcohol and that new perfume. Twice she claimed to be staying overnight at Jessica's place after girls' night, because she had too much to drink to drive home. Our conversations felt forced, and I caught her in several small lies about her whereabouts. Then came the day that changed everything. Jennifer was in the shower, and I needed to check the weather forecast for a job site visit. Her tablet was on the coffee table, and I picked it up, thinking nothing of it. We had always had an open device policy, using each other's phones and tablets freely. As I unlocked the screen, a text notification appeared from a number not saved in her contacts. I will never forget the message that appeared. "Last night was incredible. I cannot wait to have you in my bed again." My hands shook as I opened the message thread. There were hundreds of texts between Jennifer and someone named Marcus, dating back 4 months. Explicit messages, intimate photos, detailed plans for their meetups. My stomach churned as I scrolled through evidence of my wife's betrayal. With growing horror, I learned that Marcus was Jessica's husband. The girls' nights out were a cover for Jennifer to see Marcus, while Jessica was actually working late. They had created an elaborate system of alibis, using the trust of their spouses to facilitate their affair. They had been meeting at hotels, his house, when Jessica was away on business trips, and even in his car in various parking lots around the city. The messages made it clear that this was not just a physical affair. There were declarations of love, discussions about a future together, complaints about their respective marriages. Jennifer had told Marcus I was emotionally unavailable and focused only on my career, an absolute lie that stung almost as much as the affair itself. They had even discussed how and when they would leave their spouses. My hands trembled as I took screenshots of the most damning messages and emailed them to myself. I checked our joint credit card statements and found charges from hotels on days Jennifer claimed to be working or with friends. I called her office one day when she said she had a meeting and discovered she had taken the day off. The web of lies was extensive and meticulously planned. I was no longer the man who trusted blindly. I had become a detective in my own marriage, uncovering a truth that was destroying me with each new discovery. But I needed to know everything before confronting her. I needed to be prepared for whatever lies or excuses she might offer. I spent the next 2 days in a fog of pain and anger, carefully planning my next steps. I called my best friend Travis, who had been through a divorce years earlier. He advised me to speak with a lawyer before confronting Jennifer, which turned out to be invaluable advice. The lawyer helped me understand my options and recommended securing my finances and important documents. I moved some money from our joint account to my personal account, enough to cover lawyer fees and immediate expenses without emptying the joint funds. I gathered our marriage certificate, property deeds, and financial records, storing them securely at Travis' house. I even set up a small audio recording device in our living room for my own protection during the confrontation. The day I decided to confront Jennifer, I felt strangely calm. The shock had worn off, replaced by a cold determination to stand up for myself. I took the day off work, but told her I would be home late so she would not suspect anything. I waited in our living room, her tablet, with the incriminating messages on the coffee table, as I heard her key in the lock. Jennifer walked in, looking surprised to see me. She quickly composed herself and leaned in for a kiss, which I turned away from. Her perfume, the one she wore for him, made me nauseous. "Where were you today?" I asked casually. "At work then, a quick happy hour with the marketing team," she replied smoothly, setting down her purse. "Why are you home already? I thought you had that big meeting." "I canceled it," I said, watching her carefully. "Who were you with at happy hour?" "Just the usual crew. Jessica, Tom from graphic design, a few others," she said, walking toward the kitchen. "Do you want me to fix you something to eat?" "No," I said, picking up her tablet. "I wanted to ask you about Marcus." She froze mid-step, her back to me. I watched as her shoulders tensed, then dropped in defeat. She turned slowly, her face a mask of fear and guilt. "Who?" she tried weakly, but her eyes darted to the tablet in my hands. "Marcus, Jessica's husband. The man you have been sleeping with for the past 4 months, I said, turning the tablet toward her with the messages displayed on the screen. She stared at the evidence of her betrayal, then burst into tears. "It is not what it looks like," she sobbed, employing the classic line of cheaters everywhere. "Then what is it, Jennifer? Because it looks like you have been having an affair with your friend's husband while lying to my face every single day." Her denial quickly crumbled. She sank onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "You have been so distant, working all the time," she said accusingly. "I was lonely. Marcus understood me. That was the moment I knew our marriage was truly over." Not only had she cheated, but she was trying to blame me for her betrayal. I had worked hard to provide for us, to build the life she wanted, and now that was being twisted into an excuse for her infidelity. I listened as she confessed everything between sobs. How they met at a company party 3 months earlier. How an innocent flirtation escalated into texting, then lunch dates, and finally a physical affair. She claimed it had started as friendship, someone to talk to about her unhappiness in our marriage, an unhappiness I had known nothing about. Her confession became increasingly painful as she described their emotional connection. She said she had fallen in love with Marcus, that he made her feel alive in ways I never had. Each word was like a knife, but I forced myself to listen to understand the full extent of her betrayal. "I want you to leave," I said when she finally stopped talking. What her tear-streaked face registered shock. "I want you to pack some essentials and leave tonight. I cannot stay in this house with you. You cannot just kick me out. This is my home too," she protested, suddenly indignant. I remained calm. "You should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on me with your friend's husband. You can stay with your sister or with Marcus if he will have you. But I need you out of here tonight." Her pleas quickly turned to anger, then back to tears as she realized I was serious. She begged for another chance, promised to end the affair, suggested counseling. But it was too late. The trust was shattered beyond repair, and I knew I deserved better than a wife who could lie so convincingly for months. I stood firm as she packed a suitcase, alternating between tears and angry accusations. The final blow came when I asked for her wedding ring. She clutched her hand to her chest, protecting the symbol of a commitment she had already broken. "You cannot be serious," she whispered. "I have never been more serious," I replied, holding out my hand. With trembling fingers, she removed the diamond ring I had saved for months to buy. As she placed it in my palm, I felt a chapter of my life ending. The weight of that small piece of jewelry represented so many broken promises. Jennifer left that night, still protesting, but with nowhere else to turn except her sister's house. The moment the door closed behind her, I collapsed onto the floor, finally allowing the full force of my grief to overtake me. I had maintained my composure during our confrontation, but alone in the empty house that we had made a home, I broke down completely. The next 2 days were a blur of calls and texts from Jennifer, ranging from desperate apologies to accusations that I was overreacting. I blocked her number after she called 17 times in 1 hour. I informed our closest friends and family about the situation, wanting to control the narrative before Jennifer could spin her own version of events. I barely slept or ate. Travis came by with food and sat with me as I processed what had happened. I called a therapist, recommended by my lawyer, and scheduled an emergency session. I changed the locks on our home, a symbolic gesture as much as a practical one. Meanwhile, Jennifer had taken to social media, posting vague messages about forgiveness and second chances, portraying herself as the victim. Mutual friends told me she was telling people we had been having problems for years, and that I had pushed her away. It was astonishing how quickly she had rewritten our history to justify her actions. 3 days after kicking Jennifer out, I was sitting on my couch in sweatpants, staring blankly at a basketball game. I was not really watching. My phone was off to avoid the barrage of calls from well-meaning friends and family. I had barely slept, barely eaten, and was functioning on autopilot. The doorbell rang, startling me from my daze. I was not expecting anyone, and for a brief moment I thought it might be Jennifer coming to try again to change my mind. I considered not answering, but whoever it was leaned on the bell, clearly not planning to leave. With a heavy sigh, I dragged myself to the door and opened it without checking the peephole. Standing on my porch was a tall, athletic man in expensive-looking jeans and a button-down shirt. I recognized him immediately from the descriptions in Jennifer's text messages. Marcus, the man who had been sleeping with my wife. For a moment we just stared at each other, sizing each other up. He was exactly as Jennifer had described him, tall, fit, with a confident demeanor that probably served him well in his finance job. I noticed his perfectly styled hair, his designer watch, and the luxury car parked in my driveway. This was the man my wife had thrown away our marriage for. "Is Jennifer here?" he asked, his voice tense. "No," I replied flatly. "She does not live here anymore." Confusion flickered across his face. "She told me she was coming back to get the rest of her things today. She said you were at work, and you thought you would help her move out," I asked, the pieces clicking into place. Jennifer had clearly lied to him, probably hoping to get into the house while I was gone. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I know who you are, and you obviously know who I am. Things are complicated." "Complicated?" I almost laughed. "You have been sleeping with my wife for months. What is complicated about that?" He had the decency to look embarrassed. "She told me your marriage was over, that you were already separated and just living together until the divorce was finalized." It was my turn to be confused. Jennifer and I had never discussed separation or divorce, before I found out about the affair. She had been lying to both of us. That is not true, I said. We were not separated. In fact, we were planning to start a family next year. Marcus ran a hand through his perfect hair, his confidence visibly shaken. Can I come in? I think we need to talk. Under normal circumstances, inviting my wife's lover into my home would have been the last thing I wanted, but I was curious about what other lies Jennifer had told, and Marcus seemed genuinely surprised by my version of events. I stepped aside, allowing him into the house. We sat awkwardly at my kitchen table, two men connected by a woman who had betrayed us both in different ways. I offered him a beer, which he accepted gratefully. There was something surreal about having a drink with the man who had helped destroy my marriage. She told me you were emotionally abusive, Marcus said after taking a long sip of his beer, that you controlled her and isolated her from friends and family. I stared at him, shocked by the magnitude of Jennifer's lies. I have never laid a hand on Jennifer or controlled her in any way, I said firmly. Ask anyone who knows us. She has had complete freedom to do what she wants, see who she wants. Too much freedom, apparently. Marcus nodded slowly, seeming to accept my words as truth. She also told me you knew about us, that you had agreed to an open marriage because you were having affairs of your own. I laughed bitterly. We never discussed open marriage, and I have never cheated on her, not once in 7 years. As we continued talking, a clearer picture emerged. Jennifer had created elaborate fictions to justify her relationship with Marcus. She had manipulated both of us, playing the victim to gain his sympathy while using his interest to boost her ego. Most surprisingly, I learned that Marcus' wife Jessica had no idea about the affair. The women were not even close friends, as Jennifer had led me to believe. They were just co-workers who occasionally had lunch together. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me texts where Jennifer claimed to be finalizing divorce papers, looking at apartments, and planning a future with him. Messages sent on days when she and I had been having dinner together or watching movies, acting like a normal married couple. She is supposed to leave Jessica next month, I told him. She told me they were best friends. Jessica barely knows her, Marcus replied, the anger in his voice growing. They work in different departments and might say hi in the break room, but they are not friends. I could see Marcus processing everything, his face transitioning from confusion to anger as he realized the extent of Jennifer's deception. He had been played just as thoroughly as I had, though in a different way. I need to call her, he said suddenly, pulling out his phone. I watched as he dialed Jennifer and put the phone on speaker. She answered on the second ring, her voice sweet and concerned. Marcus, where are you? I have been trying to reach you. I am sitting in Arturo's kitchen, he replied coldly. We have been having a very interesting conversation about your divorce papers and my supposed knowledge of your affair. There was a long silence, then Jennifer began frantically explaining her excuses, contradicting each other. She was caught in her web of lies, with nowhere to turn. Save it, Marcus interrupted. I do not want to hear any more lies. We are done, Jennifer, and I am telling Jessica everything tonight. He hung up as she was still talking. We sat in silence for a moment, united in our anger and betrayal. I am sorry, Marcus finally said. I never would have touched her if I had known the truth. Under different circumstances, I might have punched him, but seeing his genuine shock and anger, I found I could not blame him entirely. He had been manipulated by a skilled liar just as I had been. You should tell your wife, I advised, before Jennifer gets to her with some twisted version of events. Marcus nodded in agreement. Jessica does not deserve this. Neither did you. I hope you know that. As he stood to leave, I felt a surprising moment of connection with this stranger who had unwittingly played a role in the destruction of my marriage. We were both victims of the same woman, both faced with rebuilding our lives and our trust. After Marcus left, my phone exploded with calls and texts from Jennifer. I ignored them all, feeling a strange sense of peace. The conversation with Marcus had provided an unexpected clarity. This was not my fault. I had not driven Jennifer to cheat. She had made calculated choices to deceive both of us. The weeks following my conversation with Marcus were challenging but clarifying. I filed for divorce with my lawyer, using the evidence of Jennifer's infidelity to strengthen my case. In Georgia, adultery can impact divorce proceedings, and my documentation of her affair proved invaluable. Jennifer contested the divorce initially, still insisting we could work things out, but eventually accepted the inevitable when her own lawyer advised her of the strength of my case. Jennifer launched a campaign to gain sympathy from our friends, telling anyone who would listen that I had overreacted to a mistake and refused to forgive her. Some mutual friends believed her, which was painful, but my closest friends stood by me, having seen firsthand how devastated I was by her betrayal. Surprisingly, Jessica, Marcus' wife, reached out to me about a month after everything happened. She had left Marcus after learning about the affair but wanted to meet for coffee to compare notes. We met at a quiet cafe, away from our usual social circles. Jessica was a petite, intelligent woman with kind eyes that held a sadness I recognized all too well. "I just need to understand what happened," she explained over her latte. "Marcus told me everything, but I keep feeling like I missed obvious signs." We shared our stories, finding eerie similarities in how Jennifer and Marcus had covered their tracks. Jessica had also found hotel receipts and unexplained absences, but had dismissed her concerns, trusting her husband implicitly. Like me, she was struggling not just with the betrayal but with doubting her own judgment. "How do you trust again after something like this?" she asked, echoing my own thoughts. "I do not know yet," I admitted, "but I am working on it." Our conversation was therapeutic for us both. There was something healing about talking to someone who truly understood the unique pain of this kind of betrayal. We exchanged numbers, promising to check in on each other as we navigated our respective divorce proceedings. I committed fully to my therapy sessions, working through my anger, grief, and trust issues. My therapist helped me understand that while the pain was real and valid, I could not allow it to define my future. I had to learn from the experience without becoming bitter or closed off. 6 months after discovering Jennifer's affair, my divorce was finalized with terms largely in my favor. We sold our house, splitting the proceeds according to the divorce agreement. I used my share as a down payment on a smaller home, in a different neighborhood, wanting a fresh start away from the memories. Jennifer reached out several times during this period, especially after I heard through mutual friends that her relationship with Marcus had imploded spectacularly just weeks after our confrontation. With nowhere else to turn, she tried to convince me that she had made a terrible mistake and wanted to rebuild our relationship. Each time I maintained my boundaries, refusing to engage beyond necessary divorce discussions. I threw myself into work, earning a significant promotion that kept me busy and focused. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my marriage and made new ones through a mountain biking group I joined. The physical exertion of biking challenging trails helped channel my residual anger and built my confidence in unexpected ways. Jessica, Marcus, and I occasionally met for coffee, forming an unlikely support group bound by our shared experience. Marcus had moved to a small apartment and seemed genuinely remorseful about his role in the affair. Jessica was dating again cautiously, which gave me hope that I too might eventually be ready. And then, about a year after the affair, something unexpected happened. I was at a local bookstore when I literally bumped into a woman named Lauren while reaching for the same photography book. We laughed about it, started talking, and ended up continuing our conversation over coffee. She was intelligent, genuine, and refreshingly direct. I found myself attracted to her, but hesitant to act on it. When she suggested meeting again, I was honest about my recent divorce and trust issues. Rather than being scared off, Lauren appreciated my honesty. "Everyone has baggage," she said with a warm smile. "What matters is how you carry it." We started dating slowly, both conscious of my need to rebuild trust gradually. Lauren was patient and understanding, never pushing for more than I could give. For the first time since Jennifer's betrayal, I found myself genuinely excited about the possibility of a relationship. Looking back now, I can see that discovering my wife's affair was actually the beginning of a better life, not just the end of my marriage. It forced me to confront issues I had been ignoring: my tendency to trust blindly, my willingness to accept less than I deserved, my habit of making excuses for others' bad behavior. I learned to trust my instincts. The signs had been there all along: Jennifer's sudden secretiveness, unexplained absences, emotional distance. I had ignored them because I did not want to see the truth. Now I know that genuine love does not require you to ignore red flags or accept disrespect. The most important lesson was learning the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I have forgiven Jennifer, not for her benefit, but for my own peace of mind. Carrying anger and resentment was only hurting me. But forgiveness does not mean allowing someone who betrayed you back into your life. It means releasing the hold they have on your emotions while maintaining healthy boundaries. Today, I am grateful for the painful experience that taught me these lessons. I am stronger, wiser, and more authentic in my relationships. I know my worth and will not settle for less than honesty and respect. The betrayal that once seemed like the end of my world became the catalyst for building a better one. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that eventually led to positive changes in your life? How did you rebuild trust afterward? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of overcoming challenges. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.